Renovating Retirement with Charlie Jewett. Oh no, I think I'm about to have another episode.
Number 9, 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 number 9. Hey everybody, Charlie Jewett here with the Renovating Retirement Podcast. For those of you that know the Beatles and love the Beatles, you may have recognized my ridiculous version of that. I don't know if it was authentic, but I did it 9 times. I don't know how many times they did it. It felt right to do it 9 times. And 9 is kind of a theme of our podcast today, even though it's not episode 9, it's not episode 109, it's not 119, 129, 139, 149. It's actually episode 145. Now, this is Tony Robbins' 7 Steps to Financial Freedom, step number 2. Okay, episode 145, 7 steps, step 2. What does 9 have to do with any of this? As I've been going through Tony Robbins' book, which is, over 1,100 pages in a PDF, I think the printed book is 650 pages or something like that. When I got to step number 2, you may have noticed I haven't published a podcast in a while. When I got to step number 2, I realized that step number 2 was a beast. Step number 2 was Tony Robbins exposing 9 myths in the financial services industry. Now, I love that. That's way up my alley. I love Tony Robbins. I love the book he wrote. I love what he teaches in multiple different areas. Certainly love what he teaches in finances. But he can be wordy. He's got a lot to say. I mean, if you've ever been to one of his events, you go till like 11, 12 o'clock, 1 in the morning, and starts the next morning, right away at 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning. He's got a lot to say because what he has to say is great. And on step number 2, he had so much to say, I couldn't even get a podcast out last week. I had to take the time to study it. But step number 2, we're going to be busting these myths, okay? So let me jump back to see what he titles it so I can be authentic here. Step number 2, become the insider. Know the rules before you get into the game. Now, this is very much up my alley. I want you guys, what is this podcast all about? It's exposing the lies. It's teaching you everything you need to know, teaching you how to be an insider, teaching you the rules of the game so you can play and win. So this is very much up my alley. I started my podcast before the book came out, I believe. Hadn't read it, hadn't talked to Tony about it, anything like that. When it came out, he happened to be partnered with a group that I was a part of. So for many years, anybody that read Tony Robbins' book in the state of Hawaii ended up coming to me, and I built their financial plans. I don't think he's partnered with that group anymore. He's now like a chief psychological officer or something like that for a money management firm that seems to do a good job if you need money management, frankly. But you've heard what I've said about the stock market as an unnecessary tool. But he does teach indexed annuities. He does teach indexed universal life insurance. He's just like all the other honest, authentic people in the industry, as few and far between as we are. We all discover the same truths of what's working and what is not working. And I think these 9 myths are really essential and important to understand. It kind of took me a while to study them and come back to you guys and be able to show you, kind of what step number 2 is. So let's jump into it. I don't know how long this is going to take. Could be a long podcast, but it's going to take as long as it needs to take, and that's fine. You can listen to it in pieces on your lunch break or on your commute, whatever you need to do. All right, let's jump into it. So become the insider, know the rules of the game. Myth number 1. We're going to expose a few myths here, 9 of them. Number 9. Myth number 1. Invest with us, we're going to beat the market. Hey, that's what the money managers are all going to say. They're going to tell you, you don't need to just buy the S&P 500, baby. Let's spread you all around into a bunch of weird stuff, and we're going to beat the market while we play golf. No, let's listen to Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett says the goal of the non-professional, that's you, if you're hiring a professional to try to beat the market, that means you are the non-professional. The goal of the non-professional should not be to pick winners. Neither his nor his helpers can do that. So even if you're managing your own money, you're not going to be able to pick the winners, according to Warren Buffett. You don't have to take my advice. You don't have to take his, but he has a pretty cool track record. So the goal of the non-professional should not be to pick winners. Neither he nor his helpers can do that, but should rather be to own a cross-section of businesses that in aggregate are bound to do well. A low-cost S&P 500 indexed fund will achieve this goal. I don't know if you've heard me say this, but Warren Buffett, in his will and estate plan, does not say, I'm an amazing trader, and the next most amazing trader I know is Joe Schmo, so when I die, I want Joe Schmo to manage all my wife's assets and grow her money and beat the market. He does not say that, and that speaks such an important message to us. What he actually says in his will, in his estate plan, if you read Tony Robbins' book and listen to his interview, or like read what he says about his interview with Warren Buffett, what he says is that Warren Buffett says, when I die, I want the money I leave my wife invested in low-cost S&P 500 index funds, or low-cost index funds, because he knows, being one of the best traders in the world, that money managers don't beat the market, but the market itself, buying the market itself, works better than hiring somebody to try to beat the market. So, by the way, I'm reading heavily from an article from Business Insider, just because it's a summary of these 9. It says Tony Robbins shatters the 9 most common investing myths, and I found it to be a good summary because the number of pages in the book that cover these 9 is immense. It's huge. So if you want to go to Business Insider, I think I just put into Google. Actually, let me hit the back button. I put Tony Robbins 9 financial myths of step 2 and came up with this Business Insider article. All right, so let me go back down to this. It says here, from 1984 to 1998, a full 15 years, 84 to 98, only 8 out of 200 fund managers beat the Vanguard 500 index. 8 out of 200. I think in his book he goes into how that's a 4%. You have a 4% chance of winning if you use a money manager instead of just buying the index fund, and that's half the percentage you have if you were dealt, 2 face cards in blackjack and then said hit me. So if you're already at 20 and you can't go over 21, you're already at 20, and foolishly you say hit me, hoping for an ace, you have an 8% chance. Well, you have half of that percent chance of winning if you pay someone to manage your money instead of just buying the index fund. So it goes on to say, instead of buying all these stocks individually or trying to pick the next high-flying hotshot fund manager, you can diversify and own a piece of all 500 stocks by buying a cheap index fund. You guys know this. So myth number 1 is basically money managers say they beat the market, but they don't. People like Warren Buffett, and then we've also got, let me go back to the article. I mentioned this on my other podcast, the 5 Lives of Retirement podcast. Oh, where is it? I think it's David Swensen. Yeah, there we go. David Swensen, one of the most successful institutional investors of all time, also says the same thing. You're not going to beat the market, so you might as well just buy the index fund. So that's myth number 1, is that money managers beat the market. They do not. Myth number 2, are fees, they're just a small price to pay. So myth number 2 is that money managers or investment advisors say that fees are a small price to pay, and that's not accurate either. Listen to this quote. The mutual fund industry is now the world's largest skimming operation, a $7 trillion trough from which fund managers, brokers, and other insiders are steadily siphoning off an excessive slice of the nation's household, college, and retirement savings. Now, who said that? Some Joe Schmo? Nope. Senator Peter Fitzgerald. What is that word? I'm laughing at myself. I'm like, co-sponsor? Co-sponsor. That works. Co-sponsor of the Mutual Fund Reform Act of 2004, which was killed by the Senate Banking Committee. Hey, wait a minute. I call BS on that. What's going on? Why did they kill it? In a Forbes article entitled The Real Cost of Owning a Mutual Fund, Ty Bernanke peels back the layers to dissect the actual cost and arrives at a heart-stopping total. The average cost of owning a mutual fund is 3.17% per year. This is from this Business Insider article I'm reading. 3.17% per year. I mean, if you just take the basics, where people say things like, over the last 210 years, the market's made, 7.1 or 7.2, but you're giving up 3.7% in, per year in fees. I'm grabbing my phone right now. I'm gonna grab my phone and say, I think it's actually 7.2. I can't remember, but let's just use 7.2. right? So I say 3.17 on my calculator right now, 3.17 divided by 7.2. So if the market makes 7.2 and you're paying 3.17% in fees, you're paying 44% of all total returns to the person who gambles for you. When all the evidence says, and by the way, this is if you're using mutual funds. How do you know if you're using mutual funds? Look into your statements, look at what they say, call your advisor, call the firm they work for, just say, do I have any mutual funds? Keep it real neutral. You don't want to spook them. Do I have any mutual funds in my portfolio? Oh yeah, how much of my money is in mutual funds? You got $400,000 account, you have $375,000 in mutual funds. Oh, thank you so much. That sounds great. Hang up. Don't say a thing. But if you're giving 44% of your returns up, 3.17 out of 7.2 or whatever, and you guys know that over the last 18 years, the market's only made 2.5 to 4.83%, depending on whether you got the dividends or not, or how much fees you paid, 3.17 will absolutely destroy all of your financial plans. It doesn't sound like a lot. Now, you can buy a basic average index for 0.14%, so 14 cents of every $100 you invest, instead of 3.17%, right? Let's just do a little division here. 3.17 divided by 0.14. Okay, if you really want to pay 22 times the fees, 22.5 times the fees, to have worse performance, knock yourself out. Let your advisor keep you in mutual funds. Stay with an advisor who would have ever dared to charge you money to put you in mutual funds in the first place. But in my world, that's grounds for dismissal. I mean, I wouldn't keep a babysitter that molested my kids and say, well, you can just keep watching my kids while I shop for a new one. I don't like that you're doing it, but I don't know who to go to yet. So just, you can keep doing that to my kids until I'm done with my shopping. I would never do that. If somebody's molesting your finances, if somebody's stealing from you, would you ever keep a housekeeper who was stealing your silver, stealing your china, stealing your jewelry? I just keep coming back and cleaning the house. Take what you want until I can find your replacement. No. I don't understand what's wrong in this industry, why it's so hard to fire somebody who's been ripping you off for so long. If you're in mutual funds, you have a criminal. And there's no law that they're breaking. So my use of the word criminal has to be kind of loose. But knowing that if you bought the S&P 500, you'd do better than being with them, and yet they still put you in mutual funds and charge you money and don't tell you about it, knowing that that indexed annuities and indexed universal life insurance both beat their strategies and they didn't tell you about them, in my book, makes them the same as criminals. And like a pedophile babysitter, or like a thieving maid or butler, you must move your money immediately. Just move it to the bank. If it's in an IRA or 401k, go to a bank and say, can I have an IRA savings account? Easy peasy. No fees, no risk, no returns, but just keep listening to episodes or get in touch at info@l5wealth.com, info at l, the letter 5, the number, wealth.com, and ask us for help. And in a matter of a month or two, we can have your money put into the right things. But don't leave it with somebody who's got you in mutual funds, for heaven's sakes. They should know better. This article goes into Jason, Matthew, and Taylor, and there's a whole bunch of these. You can go to my, charliespictures.com, CHARLIES, pictures, plural.com, and look at my Instagram page, and I'll show some similar things where we're comparing this guy versus this girl versus this guy, or 3 different portfolios or whatever. But in this article, it says, Jason had $100,000 growing at 7% minus 3% fees. He ends up with $324,000. Matthew, same thing, 2% fees. $432,000. Taylor, 1% fees. Everything else is the same. $574,000. The difference between 3% and 1% fees was $324,000 or $574,000. That is $250,000 difference by paying a 2% fee. Fees are not small. Fees are huge. If you're in the stock market, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, you're earning an average rate of return, which I've taught you is a complete and total lie, but you're paying a real rate of return fee. a real 1%, a real 2%, a real 3%. You don't know it. You don't think it. And you're still having trouble believing me as I say it? Probably. But if you are in mutual funds, you are probably paying 2, 3, 4% total fees from what's revealed inside the fund. So you're paying the fund managers. You're paying the Edward Morgan Lynch guy that put you into those funds criminally. And then you're paying a bunch of hidden fees inside of those funds that you don't know about until you read my mutual fund article. You can find it at jewettwealth.com. We are switching over to l5wealth.com because we had to change our name, not of the podcast, just of my company. But jewettwealth.com is going to still be up, and you can go look at the mutual fund article. Okay, enough of number 2. Fees are horrible. Bad, 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 bad. They will destroy you. Myth number 3. Are returns? What you see is what you actually get. That's the lie. They say, here's our returns, and what we're showing you is what you're actually going to get, and that is not true. Jack Bogle, the founder of Vanguard, very, very intelligent man, says, surprise, the returns reported by mutual funds aren't actually earned by investors. Hold on, time out. The returns, let me slow this down. The returns reported, what are reports for? So investors can see what the funds have made or what they might make. The returns reported by mutual funds aren't actually earned by investors? So let me ask an obvious question. What use are these reports? If you're getting reports on earnings that you would not have actually earned, what meaning do they have? Like, who cares? How does that help you in any way? Average returns are like online dating profiles or online dating profile photos. They paint a better portrait of the reality. When the mutual fund advertises a specific return, it's never the return you actually earn. Now, why is that? Because the returns, and I'm reading from this article, Business Insider, the returns you see in the brochure are known as time-weighted returns. Now, it sounds complicated, but it's really not. Time-weighted returns assume that investors have all of their money in the fund the entire year and don't take any withdrawals. So let's just stop here for a second. If January 1st you put $100,000 into a mutual fund and you left it there throughout the entire year and you looked at their reports, that might help you to know how much you made. But by huge numbers and huge percentages, the vast majority of people that are listening to the show are either contributing to these accounts, they're putting money in because they're still, remember this, the podcast I did in the 4 stages of retirement planning? Contribution, accumulation, distribution, or transfer. They're either in the contribution phase or accumulation where they're, contribution. They're putting money in. So some goes in January, some goes in February, some goes in March, some goes in April. They're making monthly contributions. Or, what do you do when you stop making monthly contributions? You start taking withdrawals, for heaven's sakes. You're taking income out of it. Most people are working and saving, and then they're not working and living off the assets. There's not a lot of people, as far as percentage of the assets in the world, not that many people that just have a giant chunk of money, and they're like, I don't ever have to touch that. I'm not putting money in, not taking money out. There's no fees coming out. It's just sitting there doing nothing. Most people are contributing or taking withdrawals. And for those people, this number, this time-weighted return, it's a lie. It doesn't mean anything. It's a useless number. It doesn't tell you a thing about how you're doing. So if you contribute more during times when the market's up and less during times when it's down, that number doesn't mean anything. I went out and did some research. It's not that simple to understand, but eventually I got it. I'm like, that makes a ton of sense. Time-weighted versus money-weighted returns or dollar-weighted returns is a big deal. This is another area where the mutual fund industry is allowed to lie to you. Bottom line. I'm sorry if you don't like it. If it sounds offensive or sounds kind of black and white, it just is black and white. If $10 goes up by $5 and you have 15, that's a 50% rate of return. Anybody says anything other than 50, they are a liar. It's not accurate. Math actually has Thankfully, art doesn't have this, by the way. You can't say that's a good painting or a bad painting. Beauty's in the eye of the beholder. Science, medical community, these other industries where there's different results and testing and all this, they don't have as much black and white as the math world does. Math is pretty black and white, right? Here's 2 apples plus 2 apples. There's 4 apples. If anybody says anything else, there's a liar with some sort of an agenda. Mutual fund companies do not report the returns that you would have actually earned. They report returns for a very tiny group of individuals that didn't make any contributions or withdrawals throughout the entire year. All right, enough of that. Myth number 4. I'm your broker and I'm here to help. I don't know why I have to give them that voice, but I always talk like that when I talk like a broker. I'm your broker and play poker with me and you'll get broker and broker. Play poker with your joker broker and get broker and broker while we play poker. Why not? Brokers are always saying, I'm here to help. Listen to this quote from Upton Sinclair from Tony Robbins' book and also this Business Insider article. It is difficult to get a man to understand something when his salary depends on his not understanding it. Now, I first saw this. I wasn't familiar with this quote. I first saw this in the Christian church. I don't know if any of you know this. I spent a lot of time in the Christian church, went to school to be a pastor. I was very, very convinced for a long time that was the only truth, the absolute truth, and everybody else was wrong and going to hell. And it's not where I stand right now, very proudly, as a man of integrity, studying truth and all of the data objectively. That's not where I stand right now. I'm a God-fearer. I believe in God. I believe in reality. We are actually here. That's something I actually believe. The earth exists and we exist, and I look around and go, yes, we are here. There's something happening. And I don't know what happens. And when people die, their spirit leaves, but the body's still there. And I observe all that. I get it. One of the things I noticed being in the Christian faith and then leaving the Christian faith, and if you're Christians, I'm sorry if that's offensive to you, I totally respect that you are where you are and your beliefs are where you are, and I would like the same. God is not going to lose me if he has chosen me. You know that. Here's my problem. When I talk to people of certain religions, they're not objective. They're not open to any possibility because some of them are uncomfortable. If some things were true, they would have to change their beliefs and tell their family and friends they'd change their beliefs, or maybe even lose their job. Guys, there's an entire podcast called The Liturgists, an entire podcast, The Liturgists, talking about how, they have other topics, but a major theme is how difficult it is. And by the way, they say that like many name brand, super popular members of the Christian faith who get paid to play music or preach or whatever, call them and have questions about their faith and talk to them about how can I change this, because then I'd lose my job. Listen to the quote again. It is difficult to get a man to understand something, or woman, when his or her salary depends on his not understanding it. And I will add to that, it is really difficult to get anybody to understand anything if their agreeing with you is going to cost them something, or it's going to create some sort of discomfort in their life. People are not objective. I'm okay saying that now. I'm okay saying that about myself. This entire podcast is supposed to be the objective truth as I see it, having spent all this time in the industry and found that most people are scammers. But I'm telling you, I don't think I'm objective. I do my best. I just don't think anybody's 100% objective. I get paid when people come and ask us to help them and fix all these problems and save them from the thieves. How could I be 100% objective if we benefit when something happens? I just do my best. No one's 100% objective. What's really hard is to get someone to understand something when it's going to cost them their job, or their salary, or their family, or their community, or their emotions. Very, very difficult. I agree with this quote. That's why I spent so much time on it. I think it's important to understand, because you're not going to get your money manager to agree with anything I'm saying. It's not like you can take your Edward Morgan Lynch guy and go, hey, can we listen to this show from Charlie Jewett, Renovating Retirement, and just do what he says? They're not allowed to, and it would cost them their job and their reputation And it would cost them a lot of money because it's incredibly less lucrative. It's way less lucrative to do what I'm doing than to just collect a bunch of assets under management and make 1% every year, whether I work or not. Enough of that, okay? Does the person with whom you trust to plan you and your family's future have every incentive to operate in your best interest? Most of you would think yes, and you would be wrong, as the article talks about. Most people are not fiduciaries. Most people have conflicts. Most of the advisors you're working with their companies have revenue sharing agreements that actually say, basically, we're going to rip you off because it's more profitable for us. We don't have to do what's best for you. You must be with an independent. Let me rephrase that. I'm not telling you what to do. If you'd like the greatest opportunity, the highest chance of having the best retirement lifestyle or the best results, you at least would need to start with an independent, means they don't work for a big giant insurance company, they don't work for a big giant Edward Morgan Lynch firm, an independent fiduciary, which means they carry a license like a Series 65 or something like that, where they are required by law to do what's best for you. That still doesn't protect you, by the way. But if you start with something other than an independent fiduciary, you've already lost the game. You're just flipping a coin, gambling anyway. All right? You want conflict-free advice from an independent. I believe I just did an episode on the types of advisors and how they get paid and all that. Myth number 5. Your retirement is just a 401k away. I don't know if you heard my episode on the father of the 401k, the guy that created it, says it's become a monster. Many other people say it's a completely failed experiment. And why is it an experiment? Because what was before the 401k? That was what was called defined benefit plan. 401k is a defined contribution plan. Defined benefit plans said, hey, if you work here for 30 years, you get X amount of dollars in a pension for the rest of your life. So defined benefit plans were basically pensions. What's a pension? It's a guaranteed paycheck no matter what the market does. So a company would say, work here for a while, 30 years or whatever, and then you can retire and have 60% of your final, the average of your final 3 years' salary or whatever it was, some guaranteed paycheck for life. They had all these funds and were investing them. They carried all the risk of whether they did well or poorly because they had guaranteed you a payment. Well, the 401k comes along and says, you know what? We're not going to guarantee a payment anymore. We're not going to do a defined benefit. Let's define the contribution. You can put in up to $18,500 a year or whatever it is. And, what do you get at the end? Who knows? It's a crapshoot, but have fun. And all of a sudden they turn around and give you a 401k where you're allowed to put in up to a certain amount, and you have to pick your own investments. No one's really managing them. The funds are limited. The fees are high. It's a disaster. It's a completely failed experiment where if you read anybody talking about it, Tony Robbins, the father of the 401k who created it, just read anybody talking about it, 401k is a disaster. Now, I still want you to do it. If you're getting free money, if they're going to match you up to the first 5% of your salary, take the free money. Right? It still works out. Even if you made 0% rate of return, it still works out pretty well. But the so-called choices inside of your 401k plan, they're not the best. They're not giving you the best options. They're not looking at all the mutual funds in the world and saying, here's the 26 best options this year. That's not what they're doing, right? And the fees are high. Get Tony Robbins' book if you really want to dig deeper on why 401ks, are such a disaster. My advice, you've heard it on other shows, you can call in 888-285-2268, 888-285-2268, or you can email us at info@L5wealth, the letter L, number 5wealth.com, and just ask for help or ask for our mutual fund article or whatever you need from this podcast. We usually suggest that you put in money if you're being matched, and then above that, you don't. You just pay taxes on it. We'll put it somewhere else. Myth number 6. Oh, my goodness. We're 2/3 of the way through. Target date funds. Just set it and forget it. Oh, it sounds so awesome. The best teachers in the world take complicated things and make them simple. The best scam artists and thieves in the world take complicated heists or define ways of stealing money from you and make them convenient and put them in a way that feel good. And target funds are kind of like that. Jack Bogle, again from Vanguard, I am increasingly nervous about target date funds with each passing day. Now, why is that? Despite being the fastest growing segment of the mutual fund industry, target date funds may completely miss the mark. So, what are you really buying with a target date fund? You're simply buying into a fund that handles your asset allocation for you, right? They're like, when are you going to retire? 2035, 2045, 2055, and they're supposed to create a portfolio that has the proper amount of risk for you. But unfortunately, according to MarketWatch, the most conservative target date retirement funds, the most conservative, right? Those designed to produce income. That sounds like retirement to me. Not even target date, but that sounds like somebody who's going to retire, right? The most conservative funds, according to MarketWatch, designed to produce income, fell on average 17% in 2008, and the riskiest target date retirement funds, designed for those retiring in 2055, fell basically 40%. You've heard me say it before. Losing money is optional. Indexed annuities, indexed universal life, neither one of them loses any money when the market goes down. I would not have said that in 1995 because they weren't good and the market was. But today the market's not good and these are good. So I got to be honest as a man of integrity. Losing money is optional and it has not even been worth the risk. Losing 17% in 2008 was completely unnecessary. And if you look at the tools that would not have lost money or didn't lose money, like where I had my clients, they've been averaging a higher rate of return anyway than the market. So Tony Robbins is making the same point. Jack Bogle's saying the same thing. Target date funds are just not working better than the alternatives. Myth number 7, I hate annuities and you should too. Oh my gosh. Actuary John Biggs, right, former chair of TIAA-CREF pension funds, says, I cannot imagine a personal financial situation where I'd recommend a variable annuity as a good idea. We all agree on that. Even Ken Fisher, the person who said, I hate annuities and you should too, who I think is the worst financial planner on the planet. And there's nobody I dislike more than Ken Fisher in the entire world of finances. Everything I've ever seen on YouTube or read from him is chock full of fraud and lies, and I think he should be in jail. He won't debate me either, by the way. Surprise, surprise. Everything he says, I disagree with. But if you read his article, I Hate Annuities and You Should Too, where he's criminally hiding the fact that he's talking about variable annuities, but without saying variable, and trying to get you to think that all annuities have those characteristics, which is not true. I do agree with what he doesn't like about variable annuities. I just don't agree with lying to people and being deceptive and not telling them what you're talking about. Yes, variable annuities are ridiculously problematic. I think you should probably hate those too until they repent and lower their fees. Fees inside of a variable annuity, we've seen everything from 2.5 to 5.17. So you're paying an excessive amount of fees, and what are you investing in? They're called sub-accounts. Basically, mutual funds. What was the average fee inside of a mutual fund? 3.17%, we just heard earlier. What? 2.5% to 5.17%, and then you add 3.17% on top of that, or part of that, or whatever it is. It's just a fee factory. I mean, it's insane how much money, and why would you be in a variable annuity and pay those fees to invest in mutual funds where they already have fees when you could just be in the mutual funds without the variable annuity? Like, oh, but Charlie, it's tax deferred. Well, so is every other annuity. Fixed annuity, indexed annuity, hybrid annuity. You don't need the variable part of it. I'm doing air quotes. You guys can't see me. You don't need that part of it. I called one time, I think these guys had $5 billion under management, and I called my rep at this investment firm and said, I cannot figure out where variable annuities belong. Like, I'm the guy that teaches you shouldn't hate screwdrivers, you shouldn't hate hammers, and Ken Fisher's totally stupid for saying I hate annuities and you should too. There's some reason for every tool, and it does something better than everything else. So who should use variable annuities? And here's his answer. He says, honestly, Charlie, the only person I could ever imagine benefiting from variable annuities would be a ridiculously rich, like super wealthy person who wanted tax deferral on non-qualified money, so non-IRA money, and wanted to be in the stock market, like had to have the ups and downs. You could use a variable annuity, because what is it? It's a crap load of fees, with tax deferral by putting you in mutual fund-like sub-accounts. If they didn't need to be in the market, they could just be in indexed annuities and get the tax deferral, no losses, basically beat the market over the last 18 years. And that's a very small group of people, and it's certainly not the niche that I'm going after in renovating retirement. I'm not saying if you're so rich you don't care and you're so addicted to the market you can't look at any other tool, let's invest that money for you, big boy. Listen to my show. That's not what I'm talking about. This show is for intelligent people that want to know the truth and have the best and avoid all the scams and lies. And so a variable annuity just doesn't fit. But let's see what he's talking about here. Variable annuities, when you buy blah, 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 same stuff. But are all annuities bad, the article says? After all, variable annuities are just one type. Many of the experts I spoke with actually like the more traditional income annuities. In fact, they were quick to point out that everyone, even the critics, have an annuity. What? It's called Social Security. Surprise, surprise. When you're like, I hate annuities and you should too, but I'll take that Social Security check. No, you don't. You do not hate annuities. There's not a single person listening to this podcast who would say, I hate when you give me income and I have no account value. Not one of you. Not a single person would say, I hate guaranteed income and so should you. Not a single person would say, I hate not losing money when the market goes down, yet making a huge chunk of money when the market goes up. Not a single person would say that unless some liar came out and deceived you and you were confused. That's why he's my least favorite person in the financial services industry. People love annuities. I'm trying to think of the name. There's a guy that wrote an annuity article. I can't think of his name right now. If I think of it, I'll put it in another podcast. But many highly intelligent, Nobel Prize winning economists and financial advisors have said an annuity should be a part of your retirement plan. Now let's just call a timeout and go to Sesame Street level for a minute. Do we really need the experts to tell us that a tool that creates guaranteed income should really be part of our retirement plan? What is retirement? Retirement is when you don't have an income, or you stop working or sell your business and you go to Social Security and your small pension, whatever it is. A lot of people don't even have pensions. You just go to Social Security, and that's not as much as you got paid at your job. So it's either the loss of income or the reduction of income. The definition of retirement, basically the loss of income or the reduction of income. And someone has to have a Nobel Prize to say a tool that creates income should be a part of your needing income plan, your retirement plan. We don't need that, guys. We just need to get away from Edward Morgan Lynch, get away from the stock jocks, get away from the joker brokers, get away from the drug addicts who say, the stock market's the only thing that ever existed. Invest with me. No, it's not actually. It's not. And it's done crappy over the last 218, over the last 18 years. Yes, you need income when you're in retirement, so you need income tools, and those are annuities. Should it be a variable annuity? Probably not. The fees are too high, the earnings are too low, and you get lower income than you do with index annuities. Go back far enough, CDs were winning, right? Go forward a little bit, the market was winning up until 1999, and now insurance company products have been winning. Who cares? It doesn't make me an insurance guy. I'm just telling you what works, and when it changes, I'm going to tell you that. 5 years from now, if it changes, you're going to hear the truth from me then too. Number 8, we're on 2 left. You got to take huge risks, get big rewards. Oh, I've beat this one to a dead horse on previous podcasts, but let's see what they say. Benjamin Graham, the intelligent advisor. An investment operation is one which, upon thorough analysis, promises safety of principal and an adequate return. Operations not meeting these requirements are speculative. So he's talking about speculators, right? Whether it's the world's top hedge fund traders like Ray Dalio or Paul Tudor Jones, who Tony Robbins interviews in this book, or entrepreneurs like Salesforce founder Mark Benioff and Richard Branson of Virgin, without exception, these billionaire insiders look for opportunities that provide asymmetrical risk versus reward. So basically, what he's digging into here is what I've talked about on previous podcasts. More risk, more reward used to work. It did. It used to work. and it has stopped working. Okay? Listen to this. This is Tony Robbins. Before you write this notion off as crazy, he's talking about never losing money but making money. He says, I personally have an investment issued and backed by one of the world's largest banks that gives me 100% principal protection, and if the market goes up, I get to keep a significant chunk of the gains in the market without dividends, although today there are some annuities that pay dividends, by the way. But if the market collapses, I get all of my money back. I don't know about you, but I'm more than happy to give up a percentage of the upside in exchange for protecting myself from stomach-wrenching losses on a portion of my investment portfolio. I talked about this in my podcast, What If You Found the Perfect Clairvoyant Advisor? Imagine somebody could time the market perfectly. When it went up, you were in. Before it went down, you were out. Before it went up, you were in. Before it went down, you were out. Timed it perfectly. You made every dollar available on the ups and the downs. Buy the market, short the market, buy the market, short the market, buy the market, short the market. Maximum profits. And do you think that advisor would work for you for free? No way. And that guy says, you get 30%, I get 70%, or sorry, you get 70%, I get 30%, or we're going to split it 50-50, or first 3% goes to me, you get the rest, whatever. There's no way you're getting all the market without paying something. So what are the options? All the downs, all the ups, that's the market, or none of the downs, some of the ups. None of the downs, some of the ups, which is an indexed annuity or indexed universal life, is exactly the same as having a psychic clairvoyant advisor that says you win everything. You get all of it, but we share in the profits. Dig into it. Listen to my podcast. Myth number 9, let's finish up. The lies we tell ourselves. What? The lies we tell ourselves. He says, here's the truth. The ultimate thing that stops most of us from making significant progress in our lives is not somebody else's limitations, but rather our own limitations. So there's some lies that we're telling ourselves, right? Let me take a look and see which ones we're going to share here. Everybody has a feel of failure on some level, right? So we don't want to, why don't people change? Why is it so hard for me to wrestle you away from your Edward Morgan Lynch guy and get you to look at something new? People ultimately are afraid of the change. Like, it's okay right now. You haven't lost a ton of money. You don't feel the fees. But if you make a change, you might have something happen right away. I cannot even tell you how many people in 14 years, when writing a check for 200, 400, 2 million, 4 million, whatever it is, writing a check for 200,000, 400,000, 2 million, 4 million to an insurance company for a much better investment than the stock market are saying, what if the insurance company goes out of business? Although it's never happened. Although there's insurance for that. There's all kinds of things. They're just terrified. Change is scary. So we tell ourselves the lie that I'm okay right now. I don't need to change, right? What else does he have? Basically in this section, he's saying that we hold ourselves back from any improvement, and this whole entire book that he wrote is about improving your finances. But to improve your finances, you have to make change. Change is not always, what does he say? Different is not always better, but better is always different, right? So to have a better financial plan than what you currently have, you have to do something different. So he says something, we come up with stories about why we're not where we want to be, why we're not smart enough, successful enough, thin enough, rich enough, loved or loving enough. This last myth is about lies we tell ourselves. And how would I say this? I would say this in 14 years of doing financial planning and almost 3 years now of doing podcasting and interacting with you guys. The lies that people tell themselves are, I don't need to call in and get help. I don't need to email and get help because things are okay right now. Or I hear there's a crash coming, but I still have time. Okay. What if I make a change and it doesn't work out well for me? Or what if I call up and I'm probably going to call and a salesman's going to put pressure on me? That's another lie people tell themselves. Anything you're doing to psych yourself out of getting the help you need is a story that you're making up. But it's very easy, by the way. If you called us, 888-285-2268, and we were high-pressure salesmen, beating you up or putting pressure on you, you just hang up on us like you would with a cold caller that called you at dinner. That's easy, right? If you called us up and we said, we have a better plan for you, and we send you a plan, it's not better than what you have, you go, oh, I saw it. It's not for me. Thanks. And you go away. And nothing lost but a little bit of time. Like, there's nothing to be afraid of. I'm not sure why fear stops people from doing so many things. I mean, I'm afraid to go to the car dealer. I hate them. I hate that process. So do I never buy cars? No. I just use my friend Kelly, who sold cars or worked in car finance for 12 years. I have her do all the work ahead of time or come in with me, which is even more powerful, and just solve the whole problem because she knows more than the scam artist salesman, and she just stops them from all their crap. Says, you don't need to go get the 19th guy in a suit. We don't want to be here 4 hours. We want to be here an hour and a half, get the best price. Do you want to sell the car or not? If not, we're going down the street to the other dealership. That's what my company is in this industry. We are the Kelly. We are the people that cut through all the crap, protect you. You do have to use a salesman. You have to use a licensed person to get most of the stuff. So we represent you to the industry and help you to do what you need to do. Hopefully these 9 myths in step number 2, I'm sorry it took me so long to come out with this episode, but I didn't realize it was going to be a 9-part episode for step 2 of the 7-part series. But hopefully this was helpful for you to just hear my thoughts. It's a great book. All the proceeds are going to, I think, feeding families, because Tony's family was fed on a Thanksgiving one time when he was super poor, and now he's got this amazing commitment to feed tons of families. I think it's going to that charity, so I was happy to pay for the book. I think you should too. Money, Master the Game, by Tony Robbins. Hopefully this was helpful. Charlie Jewett signing off. I think you people are the best.
Renovating Retirement with Charlie Jewett.
That's all, folks.